Ladies and gentlemen, what if the very disruption you're dreading is the doorway to your destiny? What if the delay, the detour, the silence is not a setback, but the precise moment heaven is preparing to interrupt your life with a blessing so unexpected, it changes everything? God doesn't always knock, sometimes he breaks in, and when he does, nothing remains the same. God's divine interruptions never follow human logic. Often they arrive unannounced, uninvited, and unsettling. We live our lives according to a certain rhythm: wake, work, plan, rest, repeat. We structure our days with expectations, forecasts, and carefully drawn timelines. We believe we know what's next. But then God intervenes, not with a gentle tap, but a sudden, transformative encounter that changes everything. These interruptions are not always seen as blessings at first glance. They might come cloaked in confusion or discomfort. The death of a dream, a change in direction, a detour that wasn't part of the plan. And yet, when viewed through the lens of eternity, they are blessings in disguise, breaking the monotony of our lives with a burst of divine intention. God's way of moving is rarely aligned with ours. He does not fit into the confines of our calendars or plans. He works beyond our anticipation, often catching us in moments where we least expect him. That's the nature of grace. It arrives like rain on dry ground, not when we demand it, but when he deems it necessary. We may think we are stuck or forgotten, when in reality, heaven is simply preparing to descend. And when it does, it interrupts not just the path we walk on, but the very way we see ourselves, our purpose, and our future. Divine interruption is the language of transformation. It is God's way of saying, I see more in you than you see in yourself. But because we are creatures of habit, any disturbance feels like a threat. We resist the very thing meant to lift us. We fear change because we associate it with loss. But in God's world, change is often the beginning of gain. When he interrupts your life, he is not punishing you. He is calling you into something greater, deeper, more true. The blessing often begins as a disruption, because comfort would never push you far enough to see it. In Scripture, we find countless stories of such interruptions. A young shepherd, David, called out of the field to be anointed king. A fearful man named Gideon, hiding from his enemies, addressed by God as a mighty warrior. A young woman, Mary, approached by an angel to carry the Savior of the world. None of them were prepared. None of them had a plan for what happened. But all of them were interrupted by something divine. These moments were not accidents. They were orchestrated shifts in the course of history, beginning with what seemed to be inconvenient interruptions. God does not interrupt to destroy, he interrupts to redirect. Often we pray for answers, for blessings, for growth. But when they come in ways we did not imagine, we mistake them for obstacles. We cry out in confusion, not realizing that heaven has just stepped in. The moment of divine interruption is not always marked by joy. Sometimes it comes with tears, with silence, with an aching that we cannot explain. But hidden within that moment is the beginning of something sacred. What we call delays, God calls preparation. What we call losses, God calls pruning. And what we call interruptions, God may be using as introductions to new strength, new peace, new faith. We tend to measure blessings by ease, but divine blessings often come with disruption because they are meant to rebuild, not merely to add. They tear down false security. They challenge weak identity. They invite us to trust, to release, to believe. This is the gift and the discomfort of God's interruption. The mind shaped by routine will struggle to see the beauty in disruption. But the heart open to God will begin to recognize that these unexpected moments are part of a deeper story. The quiet before the storm, the pause before the breakthrough, the stillness before the heavens split open. These are not random. They are divine setups. They prepare us for the kind of blessing that does not merely fill our hands but transforms our soul. And when it comes, when the interruption finally arrives, you begin to realize something profound. You were never forgotten. You were being prepared for something you could not yet understand. The silence was not absence. It was incubation. The waiting was not waste. It was alignment. God's blessing is never early, never late. It arrives precisely when the heart is ready, and the path is cleared even if you don't yet realize it. To be chosen by God is to step into a reality that defies the world's definition of comfort. The calling does not come wrapped in ease or luxury, it comes wrapped in responsibility, weight, and transformation. Being chosen is not a crown placed gently on the head, it is more often a yoke placed upon the shoulders. Many desire the blessings of being chosen, but few understand the cost that often comes with it. To be marked by God means to be set apart, and that setting apart includes walking a path others may never understand. It includes facing storms that others may never see and enduring trials that are meant not to break you but to forge something eternal within you. When God chooses a person, He does not select them because they are the most qualified by human standards. He chooses the willing, the surrendered, the ones who can be shaped. And in that shaping, there is pain. There is pruning. There is discomfort. The world teaches us to seek ease, but divine calling teaches us to embrace refinement. The chosen are those who, like gold in the fire, must be purified. They are those who are pulled from their familiar surroundings and cast into the unknown, not because they are being punished, but because they are being prepared. Throughout sacred history, the pattern is clear. Abraham was chosen, yet asked to leave everything he knew behind. Joseph was chosen, but thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and imprisoned before rising to power. Moses was chosen, but exiled to the wilderness before returning to lead a nation. These were not moments of comfort. They were seasons of hardship, uncertainty, and surrender. And yet through each trial their calling was refined. Their faith was deepened. Their identity was clarified. God does not call someone without also intending to transform them. The chosen life is one of paradox. On the outside it may appear burdensome. You may be misunderstood, isolated, even opposed. The path may be narrower, the demands higher, the trials longer. But within, something sacred unfolds. A strength grows that is not your own. A peace develops that passes understanding. A clarity arises that could never have been achieved through comfort. The burden becomes a blessing in disguise. The weight becomes the very force that anchors you in truth. Being chosen also means being watched not just by people, but by spiritual forces. There is a target that comes with divine favor. Opposition increases. Resistance intensifies. The enemy of your soul does not trouble himself with the indifferent. He reserves his fiercest attacks for those who carry purpose. But God, knowing this, equips the chosen not with worldly weapons, but with spiritual armor. He trains their hands for battle, teaches their hearts to trust, and forms within them a resilience that no storm can undo. It is often in the struggle that the chosen begin to realize who they truly are. When all else is stripped away, when comfort, reputation, and human affirmation are lost, what remains is pure dependence on the one who called them. That dependence is not weakness. It is the essence of being chosen. It is the ability to walk through fire and emerge refined. It is the courage to walk alone if necessary, knowing that divine companionship is better than the applause of crowds. It is the quiet strength to keep walking when everything around you says give up. There is a sacred loneliness to the chosen path, not because God has abandoned you, but because He is separating you. He is setting you apart for something uncommon. And in that separation, He does His deepest work. The chosen ones are those who have tasted disappointment, rejection, and delay, and yet they remain faithful. They keep showing up. They keep believing. They keep moving forward, not because the way is easy, but because the call is real. You do not choose the calling chooses you. And when it does, you begin to see that being chosen is less about status and more about service. It is less about being seen by the world and more about being faithful in the unseen. It is not a privilege that elevates, it is a responsibility that humbles. To carry God's purpose is to carry His heart, His burden, His love for the world. And to do that well, you must be shaped by fire, molded by trials, and anchored in something deeper than comfort. When God decides to bless a person, the first evidence of that blessing is not something that appears in the hands, but something that stirs in the heart. The deepest blessings of God begin with a disturbance inside the soul, an uneasiness with what once felt normal, a sudden awareness that something within is shifting, though nothing outside has changed yet. The chosen ones do not first receive miracles in their bank accounts or breakthroughs in their circumstances. Instead, they receive a sacred unrest that pulls them from sleep into spiritual awakening. It may come as a quiet whisper or a burning conviction, but it always begins within. This internal shift is often misunderstood because it does not come with fanfare. No one else may even see it happening. From the outside, it may look like silence, isolation, or confusion. But internally, there is a realignment happening, a confrontation with false comfort, a rising hunger for something more, a sense that God is near, though he says nothing yet. That is the mystery of divine blessing. It begins as an invisible movement, a grace that calls you to open your eyes before your hands receive anything. The heart begins to feel the pressure of a new season, not because it has arrived fully, but because the soil is being prepared. There is a tension between who you are and who you are becoming. You feel stretched. You become dissatisfied with what once satisfied you. You look around at the things you used to find joy in, and suddenly they feel too small, too shallow, too distant. This is not depression, it is preparation. God is stirring the waters of your soul before pouring in the next chapter. At first, this may not feel like a blessing at all. It feels like restlessness. You pray, and there's no immediate answer. You try to enjoy your routines, but they no longer fill you. People may ask what's wrong, and you have no answer to give. What is happening is that the spiritual realm has begun to move ahead of the physical. The roots are being shifted before the fruit appears. God is not merely trying to give you something, he is trying to make you someone. When the internal world is disrupted, it is often a signal that heaven has begun to draw near. Convictions grow sharper. Passions return that had long been buried. Old wounds resurface, not to harm, but to heal. There is a stirring of forgiveness, a calling toward purpose, a deepening desire for truth. These are the subtle fingerprints of divine blessing. They are not loud, but they are undeniable. God always transforms the inner man before revealing his work in the outer world. The blessing is not just what he gives, it is what he makes of you while you wait. In that space of internal tension, the mind may grow confused, but the spirit is alive. The blessing may start as a burden, a new awareness of what must be changed, released, surrendered. Perhaps God blesses first by removing what has blocked his voice. Perhaps he quiets the noise of life so that his whisper can be heard again. And perhaps this stirring in your chest, this subtle ache that refuses to leave, is the Spirit's way of saying, I'm about to do something, and I need your heart to be ready. The inner shift also produces a strange clarity. You may not know the full picture, but suddenly you know what to say no to. You lose interest in meaningless pursuits. You grow sensitive to things that once entertained you. You find yourself drawn towards silence, reflection, prayer. This is not emotional detachment. It is spiritual recalibration. God is moving the compass of your soul, and you cannot go back to how things were, not because you've changed yourself, but because something has changed you from within. The first fruit of blessing is rarely material. It is the awakening of identity, the quickening of your spirit, the gentle but relentless voice that reminds you who you are. You remember promises long forgotten. You dream again. You repent not with shame but with gratitude. God has chosen to bless you, and he begins by calling your heart to attention. Before he speaks to your circumstances, he speaks to your soul. Before he adds anything to your life, he prepares your spirit to carry it. That shift, that quiet fire that burns without consuming, is the beginning of something holy. Human beings live by the ticking of clocks and the passing of days. We mark time by hours and calendars, and when something doesn't arrive when we expect, we assume it is late. But God does not move according to our limited measurement of time. His pace is not controlled by our deadlines or our feelings of urgency. He moves with sovereign precision, interrupting life not at the moment of our demand, but at the moment of his divine choosing. What we often perceive as delay is actually a space of mercy and formation. What we think is silence is the sound of God working behind a curtain, not yet ready to be drawn. God's timing is a mystery to the impatient heart. It tests the soul. It stretches our belief. We wait and wonder, hoping for a sign, longing for movement. The days feel long, the prayers feel unanswered, and the silence can become loud. Yet in the hidden spaces of that silence, something sacred is unfolding. The delay is not a denial. It is the slow construction of a foundation strong enough to hold what's coming. If blessings arrived too early, they would crush us. If breakthroughs came too soon, we wouldn't be ready to sustain them. Timing is not just about the event, it is about the soul's ability to carry the weight of it. All through Scripture, God reveals this truth. Noah built an ark long before rain was ever seen. Abraham was given a promise and waited decades before seeing the first hint of fulfillment. Joseph received a dream and then spent years in slavery and prison. David was anointed king but returned to shepherding sheep. Each of them might have thought God had forgotten. But the truth is, God was preparing the blessing and the person at the same time. His interruption didn't come when they asked. It came when he knew it would do the most good. Waiting has a way of exposing what lives inside us. It tests whether our faith is built on results or relationship. In the quiet years, when nothing seems to change, we are forced to confront our fears, our doubts, our pride. And this is not wasted time. This is sacred preparation. The longer God takes, the deeper he often intends to go. His delays are invitations to trust, not punishments to endure. He is not cruel with time, he is kind with it. His timing is always matched to what will most fully reveal his glory and our good. When the interruption does come, it is often with such perfect clarity that it silences all the earlier confusion. Suddenly the closed doors make sense. The detours are seen for what they were, redirections. The unanswered prayers are recognized as protective silence. God is never hurried, but he is never late. He arrives at the precise moment that serves both his purpose and your transformation. And when he comes in fullness, not fragments. Trusting God's timing requires the surrender of control. It asks us to release our grip on our own plans and allow ourselves to be surprised by his. Often we hold so tightly to our vision of how things should unfold that we miss the gentle nudges telling us to wait, to pause, to listen. But in learning to trust his rhythm, we are taught to live in peace, not pressure. We stop racing and we begin to rest. We realize that the interruption we long for will come not when we demand it, but when we are prepared to receive it in a way that honors both God and the blessing. There is a hidden grace in this divine schedule. It protects us from entering places we are not equipped to stay. It teaches us that the journey is not just about reaching the destination, but about becoming the person who can live faithfully once there. The blessing is not just a gift, it is a responsibility, and God, knowing this, refuses to rush what he deeply loves. To live in alignment with God's timing is to live in trust. It is to rise each day with hope, not because we know exactly when the blessing will arrive, but because we know who holds the clock. It is to believe that every tick of time is measured not by chance, by divine wisdom. It is to embrace the quiet seasons as holy, not wasted. For when the appointed time arrives, and the interruption comes, it will not just change your situation, it will mark your soul forever. When God interrupts a life, it rarely affects only one area. His blessings come in waves, and when they arrive, they touch everything. The divine interruption is not isolated to finances, health, or relationships. It transforms the entire landscape of a person's existence. This is because God is not interested in fixing fragments. He is in the business of complete renewal. When he moves, he does not merely repair what is broken. He redefines what is possible. The blessing does not simply enhance what is already there, it replaces the shallow with the sacred, the temporary with the eternal, the common with the divine. One of the signs that a true blessing has arrived is the harmony it brings across your life. It does not cause you to flourish in one area while decaying in another. It brings a kind of order, a rhythm where chaos once reigned. You begin to notice peace where there was once anxiety, clarity where there was confusion, strength where there had been weakness. What felt like scattered pieces of a story begin to take the shape of a divine narrative. Even the wounds of the past take on meaning. Even the closed doors begin to feel like protection. God's interruption rewrites the script you were trying to write on your own. This kind of transformation cannot be orchestrated by human hands. It is not the result of effort, ambition, or strategy. It is the result of surrender. When God interrupts with a blessing, he often first strips away the illusions that we once depended on. He removes the false securities, the titles, the habits, the relationships that kept us bound in cycles of fear or mediocrity. Then he rebuilds with truth. He plants identity where there was insecurity. He breathes courage into the places that once held only doubt. And this interior work begins to radiate outward, affecting how we live, speak, love, serve, and believe. The presence of divine blessing causes you to walk differently. You begin to move not with arrogance but with authority, knowing that you are operating under a hand greater than your own. You no longer chase validation because you know you are chosen. You do not strive for status because you are already appointed. This shift in posture alters how you face challenges. You begin to see setbacks not as punishments but as part of the process. You stop comparing your journey to others because you finally understand that the blessing on your life is custom made by the one who created you. There is also a spiritual awareness that deepens. You start to see with different eyes. People that used to irritate you now stir compassion in you. The noise of the world grows quieter as the voice of the Spirit grows louder. You are no longer easily shaken, not because everything around you is perfect, but because everything within you has been touched by something eternal. God's interruption grounds you. It centers your soul in a way that nothing in the world ever could. The beauty of this kind of blessing is that it flows outward. It never stops with you. When God changes a life, that change begins to ripple through families, communities, and even generations. The peace He gives you becomes a refuge for others. The wisdom He imparts becomes guidance for those in confusion. The strength He develops in your spirit becomes a support for others who are weak. A true blessing is never selfish. It pours over, it spills out. It turns your life into a vessel through which others can encounter God's goodness. Even your mistakes take on new meaning. God's blessing redeems what you thought was wasted. He turns past failures into wisdom, regret into testimony, loss into legacy. What once caused you shame now becomes a platform for healing. This is how His interruption works, not by avoiding the pain, but by redeeming it. Not by bypassing the storm, but by bringing calm within it. You look back and see how every chapter, even the ones you tried to skip, became essential in preparing you for the fullness now unfolding. You realize you are no longer who you were not because time has passed, but because God has passed through your life. And everything He touches, He transforms. You begin to live not in fear of change, but in expectation of His next move. Not because you crave more, but because you've tasted what happens when heaven touches earth, and you know there is no turning back. When God chooses to bless a person, He doesn't consult their surroundings or ask permission from their past. His blessing is not dependent on your background, your family name, your resources, or even your perceived readiness. It comes by divine decision, rooted in grace, and carried out with power. And when that moment arrives when the blessing interrupts your life, it disregards natural limitations. It pushes past what others thought was possible. It silences voices of doubt and rewrites labels that were placed on you in ignorance. The blessing from God is not democratic. It does not require agreement from those around you. It is sovereign, absolute, and it demands no explanation. People may have known you by your weakness, but God calls you by your potential. They may have remembered your failure, but God works from your future. When He decides to bless, He does not need the approval of those who once misunderstood you, rejected you, or tried to define you. His blessing comes in defiance of human judgment. It comes wrapped in mystery, often catching even you by surprise. The very people who thought they knew your limits begin to witness something in you that they cannot explain. They will look and wonder, not because you proved them wrong, but because God revealed Himself in you. The divine blessing exposes the smallness of human perception. People often judge based on what they see, what they hear, and what they assume. But God chooses based on what He knows. He sees the heart in its hidden moments. He sees the longing, the quiet obedience, the silent faithfulness that no one else notices. He blesses those who are overlooked by men because they have been seen by heaven. And when that blessing begins to manifest, it speaks with a power that no accusation can silence. It covers what was exposed. It lifts what was cast down. It exalts what was dismissed. This kind of blessing not only defies expectations, but it also dismantles pride both in you and in those who observe you. You learn quickly that the blessing is not about superiority, but about stewardship. It humbles you because you know where you came from. You remember the nights of prayer, the years of struggle, the seasons of confusion. You carry the memory of being the underdog, the outsider, the almost forgotten. And now, as the blessing begins to unfold, you do not boast in yourself, but in the mercy that chose you. The people around you, however, may struggle to adjust. They may resist the new you because it disrupts their narrative. Some may resent your rise. Others may pretend not to see it. But the blessing doesn't wait for applause. It continues its work, reshaping your life with or without the crowd. God does not elevate to impress people. He elevates to fulfill purpose. And when that purpose begins to shine, it often provokes both awe and opposition. But neither one can stop what He has ordained. You begin to feel the pressure of being blessed in a place that expected you to remain broken. The rooms that once fit you feel smaller. The voices that once spoke into your life grow distant. This is not arrogance, it is spiritual transition. The blessing is pulling you forward, and not everyone will follow. Some will misunderstand you. Others will try to keep you tethered to who you used to be. But when God blesses, He also separates. He draws lines where there were once circles. He creates distance where there was once closeness, not to punish, but to protect what He is building in you. The most profound part of this blessing is that it doesn't just change how people see you, it changes how you see yourself. You no longer define yourself by your weaknesses, by past labels, or by the limitations that were spoken over you. You begin to walk with quiet authority, knowing you are chosen, not better, but selected, not perfect, but appointed. And this new identity becomes the foundation for how you think, how you speak, how you move in the world. God's blessing rewrites legacy. It shifts entire bloodlines. What was normal in your family begins to change because you said yes to the interruption. Generational curses are broken. Patterns of failure are replaced with patterns of faith. The narrative shifts not just for you, but for those who come after you. And all of this happens not because you fought for it, but because heaven declared it. The blessing is not earned, it is received. And once it begins to manifest, no force, no memory, no opposition, no voice of doubt can stop what God has already written. There comes a moment when God's blessing does more than provide, it redefines the path entirely. What once seemed like the main road becomes a memory, and what felt like a detour becomes the destination. When God interrupts your life with His blessing, He not only adds to it, He redirects it. You may have spent years working toward one outcome, pursuing one dream, holding tightly to a specific plan, only to have God turn the compass entirely. And in that divine redirection, you are not being punished. You are being placed where your purpose was always meant to unfold. This is the mystery of being chosen. It is not a straight path. The calling rarely aligns with comfort. Often it pulls you away from the expected, the familiar, the safe. And it does so without always offering the full map. God will speak one word and leave the rest to faith. He will close a door, not out of rejection, but because the hallway ahead leads to something you have not yet imagined. And in the moment it can feel like loss, but what feels like interruption is actually protection. What feels like delay is often a divine redirection. People will not always understand this shift. They may see it as inconsistency or mistake. You may even doubt yourself, wondering if you heard wrong. But the peace that follows you in the change is the evidence that God is in it. When He redirects you, He confirms it not with explanations, but with inner conviction. You won't have all the answers, but you'll carry a confidence that refuses to die. That is how divine blessing works. It gives you courage to leave what's good for what's God. The redirection might come through closed doors, unexpected events, sudden burdens, or quiet nudges that won't leave you alone. Sometimes it comes through what breaks your heart. Sometimes it comes through what fails. But each redirection, no matter how abrupt or confusing, is guided by perfect vision. God sees the end from the beginning. He knows not just where you're going, but who you must become by the time you arrive. And so, He leads not just by progress, but by transformation. The route He chooses will not only get you there, it will shape you for what is waiting when you do. As He redirects, He strips away what cannot follow. Relationships that were part of one season fall away in the next. Passions you once burned for begin to fade. New desires awaken, not of your own making, but placed there as evidence of the shift. God never redirects without first preparing the heart. He softens you to release what is familiar, even when it feels like security. And though the letting go is painful, the grace to move forward is stronger. You begin to feel more discomfort staying where you are than stepping into the unknown. Along this path, you will wrestle with uncertainty. You may look back with longing or fear. You may wonder why the old dreams had to die. But slowly, with each obedient step, you'll begin to see what God was doing. He was not robbing you of a future. He was rescuing you from a counterfeit one. The road He leads you on will be marked with signs of His presence, unexpected provision, timely encouragement, divine connections, moments of clarity that come like light breaking through clouds. And the most unexpected blessing in this redirection is what it reveals about God Himself. You discover that He is not a distant observer, but a personal guide. He is involved in every detail, every fork in the road, every decision you were afraid to make. You come to trust His interruptions more than your plans. You begin to live with open hands, willing to follow even when the path disappears beneath your feet. Eventually you reach a place where you no longer fear change. You welcome it not because it's easy, but because you've tasted what happens when God takes over the steering. You become someone who moves with the wind of the Spirit, not the weight of expectation. And this, perhaps more than anything, is the blessing, not just that your path changed, but that you changed with it. You became someone who knows that being chosen means being led, and that wherever He leads, the blessing will follow. You were never meant to live an ordinary life, confined by the limits of what others see or what you once believed about yourself. You were chosen, handpicked by God, not for comfort, but for purpose. And when God interrupts your life with a blessing, it is never random, never late, never small. It is the divine expression of a plan that has been unfolding since before you knew to ask for it. He breaks into your expectations, not to destroy them, but to exceed them. He rearranges your path not to confuse you, but to align you with a destiny far greater than your imagination. This blessing will touch more than your circumstances. It will awaken your soul, restore what was lost, redeem what was broken, and reroute you into the fullness of who you were always meant to become. When that interruption comes, don't resist it. Embrace it. For it is the sound of heaven saying, now is the time.